Hi, and welcome to Spoonful of Strength. I'm Rachel, and I live with multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, and a few other diagnoses that keep life interesting.
And I'm Tina. I am a fibromyalgia warrior with chronic back issues and a proud stage 4 cancer survivor. We're sisters, and together we're here to support, inspire, and connect. So if you're new here, the spoon theory explains how we navigate life with limited energy or spoons.
And we're thrilled to share that we've been ranked number 30 on FeedSpot's Top 100 Chronic Illness podcast list. So grab a spoon and let's dig into stories, tips, and a whole lot of strength. This podcast is sponsored by Spicy, the universal heat touch that brings fast, targeted relief wherever you need it. Feel the heat at getspicy.com. Welcome to another episode of Spoonful of Strength. We're excited to be with you guys today, and we have a wonderful show we can't wait to share with you. Today on the podcast, in part one, we're going to talk about talking with kids about chronic illness. We're going to talk about, even different age groups and what's appropriate from our experience, how we've discussed chronic illness with our kids. And we have some recommendations, some links that we'll also be sharing for the episode of some books that you can find for talking with your children about chronic illness. In part two, we're going to welcome Ashley in. And Ashley is a retired special education teacher. She's also a two-time publisher of poetry, and she's working on her third book. She's doing the best she can to embrace her life as she fabulously and fiercely lives with ALS. So we are going to have a great conversation with her. Welcome her into the Spoonful family. So, Tina, how you been doing? How's your week been?
It's doing okay. How about yours?
It's been busy. It's good to be able to sit down today and take a break from all the other noise going on and sit down and talk today. So you had a flyball tournament this last weekend, right?
Yes, I did. I headed down to Greensboro, North Carolina for a tournament there. And then after that, the following weekend, we head up, and that's when we open up our camper. So
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I know, I just, for somebody who promised herself she was not going to be so go, 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 I've been awfully go, go, go lately.
Yeah, you have been. You've been everywhere
Yeah.
the last couple weeks, but it'll be nice, I'm
Yeah.
sure, to get the campsite set up and
Yeah.
start enjoying some weekends out there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because we bought that. We had the last week of camping season last year. We spent the last week there to get everything closed up for the winter. Did a somewhat spur of the moment, and went and traded our camper in, and we went from a 24-foot travel trailer to a 40-foot destination camper. But it was the end of season, so we literally only got like one night. We spent one night there, and it was already winterized, so we didn't really fully enjoy it. So I'm anxious to get up there and get it opened up and get settled into the new camper. How about you? So I know this past weekend or the weekend before was when the MS walk, and this year you made the tough call to not do that. Was that hard to sit out?
Oh, it was, I was diagnosed in 2015. So the 2016 MS walk, I did not attend. It was just too soon. I wasn't ready for it. And I went to 2017, 18, 19, and then 2021 were canceled because of COVID. And I went in 2022 and 23. So I haven't missed a year since I started. And yeah, it's been on my mind, and it's last couple weeks pondering, am I going to do it this year? And I think two things came up that kind of made the decision to step out for a year. And it was just number one, physical. I've been able to do the 1 mile walk. Usually somebody will ride my scooter for me, but I have been able to do the 1 mile walk for every year. And I just knew that wasn't going to be possible for me. And the other part that was just, I'm not sure if my body's ready for that the whole day. The muscle weakness has gotten worse. I'm having a lot of knee pain and just physically and mentally, I'm just exhausted. And, even doing a half a day like that, I had to make the choice to take care of myself and not put my body through the just even, the 5 hours of being outside in the cold and all of those things. And it was a hard decision, but and I hope that I can do it next year. And especially with waiting on, I'm still waiting on the biopsy results. And so I still don't know what's going on. But yeah, that was a hard one, but um, hopefully we'll be back next year and ready to roll.
Good, good, good. Sometimes it's hard to make that determination, of going,
Hmm.
okay, you know what, I can't do it this year. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm not very good about self-care and I'm usually the first one to push through. And the last couple months here, my body's just not doing the things that it needs to do. And it causes a lot more issues the next 2, 3, 4 days after I, step out and have a long day. So, I had to be selfish for myself this year.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You said something interesting though,
Okay.
because sorry, I just zeroed in on this because you said you had to be selfish for yourself, and it's like that
Yeah,
seems like a whole new topic of how do you overcome the guilt of
it
of
is.
putting yourself first.
Well, and if you think about it, last year for the walk, I had just started Spoonful of Strength, but we hadn't started the podcast. And so a lot of the guilt was here I am in a position where I'm spreading awareness and I'm advocating for people and I'm doing all of these things that it would be a disappointment to our listeners or that I would somehow be betraying my role that we've stepped into the last year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So I
Um,
I
yeah,
yeah.
struggle with feeling like you need to walk the walk, so to speak.
If you're
If
gonna
you're gonna
talk the
talk the
talk,
talk, walk the
yeah,
walk, yeah,
yeah,
something like that. But
yeah, yeah.
um,
It will all be fine and hopefully next year I'll be in a better position mentally and physically to be able to go out. Maybe we will even have an episode where we talk to people at the walk and share it as an episode. So that's my hopes, at least.
yeah, that would actually be really cool. That would be
Yeah,
very cool to do
yeah.
next year. Oh, and maybe next year I can work out. I always say that I was going to come out, that I want to come out and do a walk with you. So that could actually be my motivation of doing
There you go.
a special podcast next
Yeah.
year.
Yep. That would be fun. Um, but yeah, I say we start talking about the real reason that we
Yeah.
joined today, which is to talk about kids and explaining chronic illness to kids and the impact that it has on kids. And so let's dive in. Let's talk about it. So I had type 1 diabetes before I even got married. So by the time, I had kids and they were old enough to kind of understand, I just kept it pretty simple for them. Mommy's body needs sugar and that's why, I need some juice. And even when they were older, I would get them involved and say, "Oh, mommy needs a juice box. Would you go get me a juice box?" And I think one time, one of the boys, I think it was Bryce, and he said, "Mommy, I'm saving your life." And he was so proud that
Oh,
he went and got a juice box to help mommy. And
mhm.
but it didn't impact them a lot. I think when I was diagnosed with MS, they had seen like 5 years of me in and out of the hospital or not feeling well. Um, I tried to hide it as best I could, but they were, let's see, they were 14, 12, and uh, 9 when I was diagnosed with MS. And so I don't think they really understood a lot about it. But as they've gotten older, they have a better understanding about it. And so at those ages, it was just, mommy's tired and mommy's legs aren't working well and so mommy has to sit and things like that. As they've gotten older, they have a deeper emotional part to that diagnosis.
Yeah, I agree. When I was just sitting here while you were talking, I was doing the math in my head of how old Brittany would have been when I got my cancer diagnosis, and she was in college. She was 21, but still living at home. So I didn't, it was easier for us to have those conversations, it was easier for us to have conversations with her as an adult child, but even that was still, she was still a young adult, and it
Yeah.
was, still difficult and still, maybe more a little difficult for her to understand like the seriousness of what was going on.
Hmm.
Um, but but it was hard because she struggles a lot with anxiety, with a lot of anxiety. So, finding that balance of being open and saying, this is what I'm dealing with, and this is not good, and this is what to expect as I go through treatments, um, in a way to not increase that anxiety that she already lives with on a daily basis.
Yeah. I'm sure that was difficult. I can see her being a very empathetic
Yeah.
person. And um, I can see her being also very helpful,
Mhm.
to helping to take
Yeah.
care of you.
Yeah, absolutely. She was, and it was funny because I always talk about I remember when I first got home from the hospital, and we're all trying to process it, but I felt like there were times that it was just, we're all sitting there watching TV and I could feel myself getting overwhelmed and
Hmm.
needing to go cry. So I would just kind of but I didn't want to let them see me do that. So I would sneak into the bedroom and lay down and be like, I'm just gonna lay down. And like 2 minutes later, here both of them come and
Hmm.
alone. And then there's the dog, and then the dogs come running in, and I'm just like, but I like, trying to leave, but I also know that they were processed, and that's the hard part too, is also with the newly diagnosis is you're trying to process it, but it can be difficult to help your children process it at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, I have 3 boys, and I feel like, both of us don't have a lot of experience with this because you had Brittany and I have 3 boys. So neither of us have dealt with a chronic illness or a health issue having a boy and a girl. But I feel like with boys, they're a lot more, I don't want to say less empathetic, but they're just different. And so I always felt, I always wondered, like, are they understanding this because they're not very emotional about they weren't very emotional about things. And
Mhm.
where it was more like we gave them the information and they digested it and were few words were said and it's hard to get emotions out of you know out of out of the boys but now that they're older I see things in them where I can see how connected they are and how they worry and things they just do it in a different way.
Mhm.
And um my oldest is autistic or on the autism spectrum and he's very non-emotional. He's always been that way. And I see him the first one to reach a hand out or to check on me or worry about me fit more physically if we're out
Mhm.
and and I see each of them kind of process it in a different way, especially as things are progressing going forward. But I always worried about how they were doing emotionally because they weren't very emotional, kids.
Right. Right.
Um, But do you think that in talking to kids that it's good to explain the difference between I'm sick and I have a chronic illness because I can imagine there can be um a little bit of a crossover of like you don't want to say, well, mommy's sick because then they think anybody has a cold or there's some confusion about, oh, is this just a cold or mama's stomach hurts or whatever versus kind of saying specifically this is a chronic illness. Like, how do you think
Mhm.
those terms differ?
Yeah, I think it's important, especially for the younger ones, to be able to somehow figure out how to make that distinction because you don't want them, like you said, you don't want them thinking, oh, I'm sick, and then them worried that they're never going to get better or they're going to
Yeah.
have, versus, and it could even be something as, just approaching it going, you know, especially if it's a child that's ever had a cold or gotten the flu or something, you go, how when you were sick with this, but you got better, mommy or daddy or, whoever is, they're in their family that's dealing with it, I have this, but it's something that I'm not going to get better from.
Hmm.
Um, and it can be difficult to try to figure out how to do that. But I think that's where it's important to um, find different resources that might help you with that, whether it's, some, child counselors, child
Hmm.
psychologists or psychiatrists, or support groups or, um, books. There's books out there, children's books, storybooks, things like that talk about different chronic illnesses,
Hmm.
and things like that. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
I think it's just so hard. I think the communication has to be really good because I can see how a child might get scared if you explain it and they think, well, you're never going to get better, or it can bring up a lot of fears. And I think everything obviously has to be age appropriate.
Mhm.
Um, but I could see where it could be scary if that question comes to you of like, well, are you going to get any better or are you going to die? Or,
Right.
not understanding really what it looks like. Um, and trying to help them process all of the feelings of that. And of course, talking to a 5-year old is going to look completely different than talking to a 10-year old. But Um, I think just including them, not necessarily giving them all of the information, but giving
Right.
them enough information to for them to get a little bit of understanding without feeling scared. And we also did family counseling just to discuss my illness. This was a couple of years ago because um, there had been some changes and things, and to help them process and understand what I'm going through. And you talked about books. We're gonna link some books into the description that we found about talking to kids about chronic illness. And so we've got a list that we'll include it with links so you guys can see some options that you have. Hey, pain fighting legend, it's your girls from Spoonful of Strength, and we have found our new heat therapy BFF.
Oh, yes, we're talking about the Universal Heat Patch from Spicy. This 70s vibin' patch is your go to for chronic pain, tense neck, or even that workout you probably overdid.
It's thin, portable, 8 inches of bliss, and get this, up to 12 hours of natural, medicine-free relief. No cords, no fragrance, no mess, just soothing heat.
You can wear it under your clothes like a pain relief ninja. No one has to know you're secretly healing while slaying your day.
Built by chronic pain warriors for chronic pain warriors, because we all deserve relief that actually works.
Visit getspicy.com and follow them on Instagram at getspicy. Join the movement where pain relief meets disco vibes.
Get spicy and stay groovy, pain warriors. Do you think that, and I've mentioned this on a previous episode about how I went into counseling and I was having a lot of grief about my kids and not being able to do the things that felt like I needed to do, and how I was told by my therapist of that I was teaching the kids about empathy and teaching them how to be kind to people and to help each other out when somebody's struggling. What are your thoughts on the different lessons or traits that they can learn from having a parent with a chronic illness?
Yeah, I do. I can definitely see that how it can help them grow with in a different light. But yeah, I do think that it may give them a different perspective of the world and the importance of being understanding and showing others empathy at an earlier age than what most kids probably do.
Yeah. I remember when I started using a cane more often, one of my biggest worries was I don't want to embarrass my kids. Like, I don't want to be at a band concert or some event where his friends will be, and I don't want him to be embarrassed by me using a mobility aid. And I was very lucky in the fact that I had that discussion with them during a time where, we were going to be out. And I always just wanted to make sure like they were comfortable. And I never had anything other than, oh gosh, mom, no, no, it's not a problem. And I've never had any sort of feelings like that. But that was something that I definitely carried. But to tag on what you said, I honestly believe that it does give them more empathy. And seeing them at the MS walks was very eye-opening for all of us, because you would see people that you would look at and go, well, she doesn't have MS. And, you can't tell that she has MS. And then they would see people in wheelchairs, and we would talk about that as well, of how does that make you feel? And do you worry that mom's going to be in a wheelchair someday, and things like that. And so those were conversations that we had a lot. And I truly believe that as now all of my kids are 18 and up, that they have a more compassionate understanding of chronic illness and people with disabilities.
And sometimes I've heard, yeah, I didn't think to research this, but I know that there's, I've heard stories out there of doctors or those in the medical field. They chose that because they had a family, they grew up with a family member dealing with some type of chronic illness, and that almost had an impact. It had an impact on their future career
Mm-hmm.
choice, because it just so inspired them so much to want to step into that and be able to help others.
Yeah. And we've even had spoonies on our podcast that have gone into um, the medical field or gone into advocacy and different things because of what they've been through.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. um
Talking about how chronic illness, we've talked about in the past about how chronic illness can affect relationships and how it can affect friendships and social circles, but it also can affect the kids as well. There were many times where if we were on vacation or if we were out doing something, that I would have to go sit and not be as physically in the moment just because of my illness. And I think that um, I had a choice. Like, our family loves to bowl, and it got to a point where I couldn't bowl anymore because of the balance and the strength. But so I had to make a decision. Do I go and watch them have fun, or do I remove myself? And I've always made the choice to be there and enjoy myself watching them having fun, which is difficult. Now, as
mhm.
things have progressed a little bit, I have to make some choices to remove myself. But they're also older. But I always
Right.
made sure that I was at least there and cheering them on and doing the things that I needed to do to support them. I know I mentioned that earlier when I was talking about my diabetes of, involving my kids into um, helping me out. And I think that I don't like the phrase like kids like being caregivers and taking care of you. But I
Right.
do feel like it's important for kids to help out and to, if I'm not feeling well, for them to pitch in because we're a family. I had something happen. I had the flu about a month ago, and even my son, who's 18 years old, I needed to go to the urgent care. And I was talking to Ed at work, and he was like, well, I can come home and get you and take you to urgent care. And I said, well, I wonder if Jaron would take me. But then I said, oh, I don't want to put that on him. I don't want to make him have to take care of me and all of that. And so I was talking to Jaron and I was like, um, maybe you could take me. And he was like, yeah, I can do that. And then I was like, oh, well, Dad said he would take me. And I saw this look on his face of disappointment. And I said,
Oh.
and I said, um, are you okay? And he said, yeah, I just really want to help. And I said, okay, so this is what we're going to do. I said, you're going to take me and Dad's going to meet us there. And that will save so much time. And I built it up, of like,
Mhm.
and I told him, I said, Jaron, it's not that I didn't want you to take me. I just have a hard time asking for help. And I didn't want you to have to, deal with it, so to speak. And he
Right.
was like, well, I
Right.
just want to help. And so I think there can be a fine line sometimes of, involving your kids and making them
Mhm.
feel like they're helping you.
Yeah, yeah. Especially, it's interesting because it's definitely a different line, age wise. It's, like you said, they loved going to get you the juice boxes when they were
Yeah.
little. because,
Mm-hmm.
they like to help mom. And, as they get older, that's where, okay, do they want to help, or are they, especially when they hit those teenage years of, where they're not as enthusiastic about as about
Yeah.
things in general. Um,
Yeah.
but it could be important to have, you bring up that the importance of um having those conversations at all ages,
Yeah.
of saying,
Yeah.
okay, I appreciate you helping me, or there's times that, just having those open conversations of how are you feeling about this? Are you okay if I need help? Do you feel if
Yeah.
I don't ask you for help, are you feeling like I'm not wanting you to help me? Which,
Yeah.
where in your mind you were thinking, I just want them to kind of have a normal, so to speak, childhood, or,
Yeah.
I don't want to burden them, but
Yeah.
at the same time, you don't want to alienate them either.
Yeah. It's been a long road. I mean, I've always had chronic illness every part of their
Yeah.
lives from the time that they were born.
Yeah.
Um, but the conversation has changed quite a bit. The news that I got yesterday, we haven't said anything to them yet. I'm hesitant about talking with them because I don't know yet if it's a genetic condition or if it's not, and I don't know what it is yet. And I don't want to put that worry on them if there's nothing to worry about. So
Right.
I want to be careful about saying, well, it could be genetic, which means you guys could have this. I kind of want
Right.
to you just say, oh, there's more testing that needs to be done and we're back waiting. And then my doctor said, we will know if it's a genetic condition or if it's not. And if it is a genetic condition, then that's the discussion that I will have with them
Right.
um, going forward. So right now we're not involving them too much in
Mhm.
this discussion at the moment. But I think, to wrap it all up in a bow, and I'll get your kind of final thoughts too, but I think that kids are resilient, and I think sometimes, hiding things from them or keeping things from them, maybe is not the best decision. I think it just needs to be age appropriate and it needs to be done
Mhm.
out of love. And I think that as long as we keep their emotional well-being and checking in with them a lot of how they're doing and how they're comprehending news, um, and revisiting it, you know, occasionally and just kind of checking in with them and just making sure that they're processing it and understanding it correctly and making sure that they're not going to bed at night with worries that something's going to happen to mommy or daddy. And
Okay.
um I think it could be a very good gift that we give our kids of learning to understand chronic illness and learning to love people and take care of people. And that could be a great gift that you can
Mhm.
teach your children. So, what are your
Yeah.
final thoughts?
Yeah, it's gosh, I couldn't sum it up any better than what you did. It's just it's important to have those open conversations, and it can be difficult at times because you want to protect your kids, especially when they're younger, but they're also, the younger they are, the less they understand if something suddenly is changing too.
Hmm.
So sometimes the mindset of wanting to protect them from, and you don't have to share everything, but to kind of put a shield around them and not want them to pretend that nothing is going on is not fair for them either.
Hmm. Yeah.
um and it's, like you said, you don't want to cause them unnecessary worry if you don't have the full answers either.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
like how you're approaching this this situation. And even though they're adult children now, uh, if they ask, just say, well, we're waiting on, more testing needed to be done to figure everything out, is a completely valid
Yeah.
response. But I guess, you also don't want to discount things that are, what you're going through, of saying, oh, you don't need to worry about me, I'm fine. Um, because then at some point, if things get worse with whatever, chronic illness it is, if, or when you're not fine, they're going to be like, well, you kept telling me you were fine, and now why am I
Yeah.
just now hearing about this? It's just a funny story, quick funny story, because I know we're getting close to this, is, sharing those the older parents and adult children. Dave's dad had cancer, and when I went through, and he was already passed away for many years before I was diagnosed with mine. But his mom was like, "Oh yeah, your dad. He ended up losing one of his kidneys from some of the chemo drugs or something. Something affected it, and from while he was going through his prostate cancer." And she's like, so they took that, and we're like, how are we just now hearing about this like 15 years later,
Mm,
that like
yeah.
we had no clue that happened?
Hmm.
Um, and it's also, you kind of that's doing your kids a disservice with that,
Yeah.
especially as adults, because the genetic factor is so important. So not
Yeah.
letting your kids know everything that's going on, especially if it's something that could be genetic, is
Yeah.
is can be frustrating. It's not fair for them as they grow up.
Yeah. Yep. I think as long as it's everything's done with love and concern for everybody involved, it um hopefully we'll all be good. So
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
let's bring on Ashley so we can talk to her about living with ALS. ALS is a progressive disease that affects nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, leading to muscle weakness and loss of movement. Over time, it can impact speaking, eating, and breathing. While it's currently incurable, many with ALS continue to live with strength and purpose.
Thank you, Ashley, for coming onto the podcast today. We're so excited to talk with you. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing my best. It's been an emotional 2 weeks, but we're here, we're happy, we're healthy, and I'm just really excited to
Aw.
talk to the both of you and just have some different type of happiness
Mm,
today.
wow.
Good.
Good,
I'm
good.
glad.
We're really excited to talk to you as well, and we've been looking forward to this. So,
Yeah.
um, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, what you like to do, and just start by introducing yourself?
Sure. So, my name is Ashley Rivera. I am a ripe 30 years old.
Mhm.
I turn 31 next month, May 19th. I'm from the Bronx, New York. I rap it very hard, but for now we reside in Connecticut, a very different life. Um, I'm a retired special education teacher. I have a service dog named Revy, and I love her. She's
Oh,
the best thing that happened.
she's so
Oh.
cute.
She ran upstairs. I wish I could show you, but
Oh.
if there's food in anyone's hand, I don't matter. But I'm also an author. I have my third book coming out hopefully this June. So we can look out for Spilling the Tea 3. And yeah, I have ALS.
What were your early symptoms before you received your ALS diagnosis?
Yeah. Actually, I was getting ready to go out on the night in Manhattan in the city, and I was combing my hair into a slick back bun, and my hand would not let go of that brush. It was cramping all around the brush. And as a softball athlete, I thought, wow, I'm just really dehydrated. The weeks went on, months went on. I saw my sneakers on my right side getting dirty. And I said, well, that's not good. I'm not walking the right way. And all of a sudden, groceries became heavier. Like I couldn't carry some eggs. And I said, well, time to go check out the brain. Initially, I thought MS or Parkinson's. Never in my life would I have thought ALS.
And so, what emotions did you go through when you received that diagnosis?
So back in March 2022 is when I received my diagnosis. Um, Initially, I was shell shocked and I felt like I was living in the Twilight Zone. I'm like, this is for older people. I'm only 27, 26. I can't count, maybe 25.
Mm.
um, and after the shock, it was sadness, anger, anger for my future, grief. You never stop grieving. With every loss of a muscle or limb, you start all over again. The 7 stages of grief. And now that I'm my 5 year mark, I'm still alive. I'm still here. I was in a really nice relationship that I let go. I was graduating grad school. I was publishing my first book. So I had a lot of things going for me, and that kind of a screeching halt, like a truck hitting a wall.
For people who don't know what ALS is, could you describe what that is? And you mentioned the 5 year mark. What are the statistics?
Of course. So I loved explaining this to my students. There you go. I taught high school kids. So we were almost the same age. I used to go, it's like going to a party and then sitting down after dancing 7 songs and not being able to get back up.
Mhm.
It's over. No more lifting, no more partying, no more anything. So, with the death of your motor neurons, you kind of stop being able to speak, which you can hear it a little bit in my voice. My hands and my arms are, they don't work. And by the grace of God, I'm still able to walk very, very, very short distances. But we make it work. It's hard, it's tiring, it's super emotional. You have no idea
Mhm.
until you're in the thick of it. And you have to find a way. You have to be a motivator for yourself to push yourself to do things.
Mm.
You cannot give up because then everything will stop working.
I can imagine your life changed dramatically after your diagnosis. What does your day-to-day life look like now?
It's very slow and easygoing for the most part. Revy and I will wake up, we'll cuddle, we'll watch Charmed, which is what we're binging right now, or the challenge, or Yellow Jackets, or SNL.
Mhm.
We come down, we have coffee, and with ALS, depression and anxiety can play a huge role in your life. So, with my mom and my caregiver, Mimi, they have to force me out.
Mhm.
Like, go get some sun, go to the beach, go to the mall. But you also spend a lot of money. I am a shopaholic now, and it's because I'm bored. I have
Hmm.
nothing to do but use my lifeline, which is my phone. And there's Amazon and Instacart and
Mhm.
Sephora. So it's it's slow, and I get to bird watch out my window. Luckily, I get to see the seasons evolve. And before, I never really got to do that. Like the last few days, spring actually rolled in. So the trees are blooming, the woodpecker birds are hatching in our backyard. We have two little woodpeckers back there that wake me up every day at 6 a.m. and a little bluebird. It's very, very retirement like.
Yeah. It
Hmm.
it almost feels like you're getting a chance now to stop and smell the roses, so to speak, and see
Exactly.
and take all of that in. And
Hmm.
you mentioned depression, which I can imagine that's a big part of your diagnosis. So how are you taking care of your mental health? Like how has that mental health changed and what are you doing to take care of yourself?
Oh, girl.
Mm.
I write a lot. My poetry has, if I can toot my own horn, I have become an incredible writer
Mm.
now because I have the time to sit here and think about how to describe this tulip or the sadness I'm feeling rather than saying, oh, I'm sad.
Mhm.
But Revna, my service dog, she is grace. She is sunlight. And I'm lucky to have her. And she makes me so happy. I love her.
Mm.
I have to take care of her, so I have to get up.
Mhm.
I have to make sure I ask my mom, like, did she poop?
Mm.
Did she go around? Did she have her snack?
Mhm.
So I have my poetry, my mom, my dad too.
Mhm.
But dads are a little different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Revna Jean.
Mm, she's so cute.
Imagine creating a life-changing product from your sofa. That's exactly what Hannah, the founder of Spicy, did.
Living with complex regional pain syndrome since the age of 8, then facing endometriosis and adenomyosis, Hannah knows pain, and she knew there had to be a better way.
So she made one. Enter the Universal Heat Patch. Natural, latex-free, and packed with comforting warmth. No chemicals, no medicine, just real relief.
It's 8 inches of stick it and forget it heat therapy. Thin, discreet, and ready to roll with you all day long.
We love a retro comeback, and Spicy brings that 70s flair while giving chronic pain warriors like us a real tool to cope. You already touched on this a little bit with Revi and your poetry, but what else also brings you joy in your life?
My nephew is 6. They say that children are always so honest and so unconditionally loving. And he doesn't know me any different. So he'll go, "You used to run? You're a liar." Like, no, look, you used to play softball? Yeah, Didi was a beast. He's like, "No, you weren't." But my family plays a big part in pushing me to see the happiness, the colors, the smells of the world. And I also travel. I may have ALS, but I went to Iceland with ALS. I went on a solo vacation very early on with ALS. Prior prior to my diagnosis, when I had a foot drop, I was still wearing heels and going to Barcelona and being drunk, a drunk tourist. Those are things that push me forward and allow me to have a life.
Yeah, I have to ask an extra question here. I have to ask about Revna Jean,
Of
and
course.
she's so cute. What are the things that she helps you with, and how does she bring you comfort?
So Revna Jean, my sweet girl, who hails from Colorado, shout out Freedom Service Dogs of America. That's where I applied, and they were incredible. I'm their only ALS person there. So Brevi at the moment will a fine person. So if I fall or if I need some help, I'll say, "Find mom." Oop. So go find my mom. Find Mimi, which is my caregiver. No problem. She'll pick up my phone if it falls. She'll open up the doors. She'll push buttons outside. She'll pick up her own leash. And one thing that's really important, no one stares at me anymore because I have her. They're like, "Oh my God, she's so cute." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, bye." But that's a really big deal. People used to stare at my AFOs or my wheelchair, and that made me super uncomfortable. But with Rabbi, it's like, "Oh my gosh, she's so cute. She's so helpful." And there she is. Please don't touch her.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we move forward.
Love that.
if you could leave one message for others, whether they're living with a chronic illness or not, what would that be?
Live. Period. Take that vacation. Use that credit card. Take those days off. If you die right now, your job will put up that position so fast, even before calling, to make sure you're okay, to send flowers. Don't wait until you have the time, because time is subjective. We never know when it's our time. Go to Iceland, go to Tulum, smoke that weed, take your time. Like, don't do anything illegal. But I think that with ALS, it thrusted me into doing everything I wanted. I have nothing on my goal list that, like, how do I say? I accomplished everything I set my eyes on by the age of 30. I got my master's. I moved out. I moved back in, but I moved out first. And I crossed my amazing radiant sorority, Omega Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, while in my wheelchair. And I am one of few that have done that. Life may come to a pause, but it does not have to stop.
Ugh, you got me on that one.
Yeah.
Stop! Girl, we've been crying all week, so
Oh my gosh. So have your views on life, spirituality, or mortality, have they changed since your diagnosis?
I would say so. I had a very, very big fight with God, and I'm not perfect. I fight still, but I'm happy I get to still have those conversations and believe. And my dad plays a huge role in how much we believe in God. And he is a pillar of our family. And yes, I have ALS, but I wouldn't have met you, either of you, without it. So I feel God gave me this horrible, disgusting disease, but there's a lot of joy that has come from it. I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have Revy. I wouldn't be writing my third book. There would be no time. Being a special education teacher is super time consuming. I loved it. I would give my life for one of my students, but I'm happy I have the time to do other things that I love.
Is there anything else you would like to leave our listeners with?
I would say take the time now, whether you're sick, not sick, in that, not in that, a student, single, married, do the things that you love, whether it's alone or with people, because on the way, you will meet people who enjoy the things that you like.
Mm,
So there's no shame in evolving alone to be better in the future. So
mm.
have fun, live life. It's too short.
Thank you so much for joining
Yes.
us.
No, thanks for having me.
I have to tell you, there's people in your life that you meet and that change your life. And I can tell you right now that I will not be forgetting you anytime soon. Just know that.
You
So,
got me.
And I'm just so honored that I had the chance to meet you.
I'm honored to be here, honest. I was crying all week.
you've had
I
a rough
know that,
one.
I know that many would have wanted me to be here. And I- I'm just very humble and grateful.
Mhm.
It would be wonderful if somewhere we get dedicated to my friend.
Absolutely. For our listeners, Ashley lost a dear friend a few days ago. Can you tell us a little bit about Manny?
Absolutely. His name was Manuel Diaz. We met in high school. He was the funniest, most unserious, cocky person you would ever meet. He loved with his entire body. He made us laugh and cry, but laugh again.
Mm.
I know he would make fun of me for crying right now. He'd be like, "You're such a brat. Get it together." And I'd be like, "Shut the hell up." But he was a dad, a friend, a husband, and very, very short lived. He was turning 32 at the end of May. And even though he passed away so tragically, he died doing one of the things he loved, like dancing, music, being around people. And we are holding on to that.
Mhm.
He was hilarious. If he was on this Zoom, he would be staring at himself. Like, like wow, that's
Uh-huh.
so handsome. But yeah, I'm listening. He
Oh.
was a sunshine in a person, motivational. He was so happy that I wrote a book, and I, I could go on and on. He was
Mm.
really hilarious.
Well, we will definitely dedicate this episode to Manny. I know that was such a hard loss for you this week, and so I appreciate it even more that you take time out to join us
It was
and
just sudden.
I know
Everyone who
those are the
lost
hard
their
ones.
lives.
Yeah, yeah, those are the ones that just tear you up when you know. Oh,
Yeah.
But he was dramatic, so
yeah,
there's that.
yeah. He had to go out in
With
style,
the
right?
literally with a bang. Like
Yeah,
relax.
yes, yeah, definitely. He was just such a beautiful person inside and out, and
Thank you.
I
You
wish
can do
everything
too.
for you.
Tell our listeners how they can follow your story on social media.
So anyone can follow me on Instagram, Athena underscore Ash underscore. And usually you can find me anywhere with that.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure. But I'm most active on Instagram and The title of my books are Spilling the Tea. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble simply by the title and my full name, Ashley Rivera. And yeah,
It was such an honor to have you join us as our guest this week. And we appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
we're
Yeah.
so happy and we're so hyped and excited.
Oh, good. Take care of yourself. Thank
Thanks,
you so
guys.
much. All
Have
right.
a good rest of your day.
Ashley spoke a lot about her poetry in the interview and asked that I share this poem that she recently wrote. This poem is called I Hope You Read This Somehow. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Walls were falling where laughter once echoed. Steel and silence where your voice used to wrap around a room like sunlight in the late afternoon. You smiled like you knew some secret, laughed like joy had a home in your lungs, and that weird wink. You always gave it when you said something ridiculous or wise or both. Now I sit with the absence of you, a shape the world no longer holds. I whisper your name in the quiet, wondering if you hear it wherever you are. I pray it was quick, that pain never found you, that in a blink between here and beyond, you felt every ounce of the love we forgot to say out loud. You were known, you were needed, you were loved. And the physical world, this loud, messy, beautiful place, will ache without you. But I hope paradise suits your soul just right. Rest easy and wink at the stars every now and then, just so I know you're still laughing.
What a lovely, lovely person. I am looking forward to digging into her. I'm not usually one to seek out poetry, but I'm really looking forward to delving into her poetry and what she has to share.
Yeah, yeah. That interview touched a little different for me. I
Yeah.
think that every Spoonie that we've had on has been such a strong individual and shows so much strength and in facing adversity with chronic illness. But I think with Ashley, the thing that changed me a little bit was just the fact of her positivity and just all of the beautiful things that she said. And I don't know if I could be that way if I had received this diagnosis. Because I'm not sure that I'm strong enough, and that just shows what a strong character she is. And I won't forget this interview for for a while, if not forever.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing that it really drove home is that there's no guarantee in life for any of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to live your life with joy and you know what there wasn't there a saying something like life is for the living or something like that. It really drove that home for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. We I plan on staying in contact with Ashley and um yeah, I'm almost speechless at this point just because of how beautiful her words were and just what an impact I think that she made on
Yeah.
me. You know, I got multiple chronic illnesses and sometimes I look at my life and go, "Oh gosh, this is so frustrating." And you know, why is this going on? Why can't I just have a good day without any pain? And I'm thinking, you know, I am thankful that as of right now, the things I could deal with, I have been dealing with. So I could deal with it another day, another week, and a month, and just grateful for her to put some perspective in my life.
Thank you all for tuning in on this week's episode of Spoonful of Strength. Join us next week. Can you believe that next week is going to be the end of season 3?
Kind of crazy.
And yeah, it's hard to believe we're getting ready to wrap up our 3rd season and first full year of. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of Spoonful of Strength. Be sure to tune in next week as we wrap this season up. We have some great topics that we'll be covering and talking a little bit about season 4. We will see you next Tuesday.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Spoonful of Strength. We hope that you found a little inspiration and maybe even a new perspective to carry with you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit that like button, follow us for more, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
And if you're feeling generous, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your support helps us reach more Spoonies just like you.
Until next time, remember to take care of yourself and keep finding strength in your story. Bye for now.
And see you next time on Spoonful of Strength.